Welcome back to Contrast Studio Live. I'm your host, Patrick Coyne, with, I think, one of the biggest badasses in the world, Laura Phelps-Stackhouse.
Thank you.
How
Thanks
are you
for
doing
having
today?
me. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing amazing.
Good.
And when I need to emphasize this more, former strongest woman in the world, 8-time world record holder, is sitting here with me. I'm kind of nerding out because I love lifting weights, but we get a chance to learn from it. And I think that's really, really important.
I appreciate it. I'm excited. I'm excited to learn from you as well.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us. The big thing is that you're taking time out of your busy day of lifting weights, training clients. So a little bit before we get into the contrast therapy world, how did you get to be the strongest woman in the world? What inherently is inside of that? How did that happen?
Well, I mean, I didn't grow up lifting weights or anything like you were talking about how your story of growing up around that. I did not. My only exposure to lifting weights was maybe in gym class. You know, I did gymnastics and a lot of sports growing up, but we, you know, the guys would be in the weight room, but not the girls, you know, so I didn't really have much exposure to it. But I, when I went to college, I went to Ohio State and then Bowling Green, and I was running all the time. I just was like, I don't really know what to do now that I'm not in organized sports. So I started running and did a bunch of 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, a couple marathons. And I just got to the point where like my body hurt. You know, I just wasn't strong. You know, I just wasn't doing anything to help to build that. So I started going to the rec center and just like kind of watching what other people were doing, not doing anything, none of the compound lifts, no squatting, you know, bench pressing or deadlifting, just like doing lat pull downs, tricep push downs, things like that. But then eventually I graduated college and started working in a fitness center at General Motors in Toledo.
Really?
Yeah. So I was in a weight room, and I was like responsible for people and helping people. So I started, you know, becoming more educated on lifting weights, got into bodybuilding. So that was kind of my segue into powerlifting.
Okay.
I did bodybuilding. So I joined a Powerhouse gym in Toledo, and there was a lot of you know, at that time, this was back in early 2000s, bodybuilding in Toledo was a big deal. You know, there were some big bodybuilders there. And so I just was like, this is what you do. If you lift weights, you bodybuild. I still didn't know nothing about powerlifting. So I did a few bodybuilding shows. I really liked that, but I kind of missed the aspect of, even though I kind of grew up doing individual sports, I kind of missed like that camaraderie of other people around and training and stuff, where bodybuilding was very like, you're kind of in a gym with other people, but you're kind of isolated. So I actually met a couple people at Powerhouse Gym who were like, you should try doing these local non-sanctioned powerlifting meets. It was just bench press and deadlift.
Wow.
And, you know, I was like, all right, I'll check that out. And did a couple of those and did well in I didn't know what well was. I didn't know what good was, but people were like, that's strong. So then I was like, well, maybe I should actually do a real powerlifting meet, one that's sanctioned. And so kind of at that time, you know, you weren't looking online to find powerlifting competitions. There was a magazine, Powerlifting USA, and you look in the back and there's like all the competitions were listed. And I had to find one that was like, okay, you know, 6 months from now, you know, what's somewhat, you know, close by. And I was living in Toledo, so it's Chicago. So I picked one in Chicago. And at the time it was like, powerlifting was very different than it is now. It was everybody lifted equipped. So if you're familiar with powerlifting, there's raw powerlifting where you're just, you know, wearing a belt and maybe some knee wraps. And then there's equipped powerlifting where you're wearing the bench press shirts, the squat suits, deadlift suits, things like that, you know? So everybody did that. So I mean,
Really?
I just quickly like ordered everything I could, you know, bench shirt and all the gear, and got some hand-me-downs from some people that I met, and just hopped right into it, into powerlifting. And when I started doing these, like, you know, sanctioned competitions, everything happened just very quickly. Like I was training with some guys that were former world champions. They were like in their 50s and 60s, and they really helped me out a lot. And so I basically every week was just like, I did not know anything about the conjugate method yet. So I was just basically lifting heavy every single week and then just going up, you know, beginner type gains. And I did my first competition in 2005. In Chicago, June of 2005, and then did another one pretty quickly after that in August, and then was invited to like the WPO, which was at the time was like the biggest, you know, federation, biggest competition that everybody was trying to get to. And I was invited to that in September, and that's when I broke my first all-time world record. So like everything happened like all within like 10 months basically of training to doing that. So it just, just everything went super quick. And then it was just, yeah.
So my big thing is for people who don't know who you learn under, and it's a big deal, is the only female to be certified through Louie Simmons. I'm a Louie Simmons nerd. Like I grew up loving Louie Simmons. I obviously can't get the chance to meet him now, but like I really, really idolized him. I was a young kid. I grew up lifting very heavy, very early. I'm extremely jealous of you being able to learn under him. And I know Louie he's one of the most creative people and successful people in our industry ever to live.
Yeah.
Don't know if there ever will be another Louie Simmons who invented all that equipment.
Yeah.
I knew Louie Simmons was very into cold therapy and was back into the day, obviously with ice baths and different things like that. How do you think if you did have the regimen that we have at Contrast with the cold tub in the room, you don't have to do ice, with the sauna, being able to get a vasodilation to get more blood flow to help you recover, how do you think Louie Simmons or yourself back in the day, I don't want to say back in the day, but when you were competing, how do you think that would have added value to yourself back then?
It would have been night and day difference, because Louie, he was very much into restorative methods. So as much as he talked about training and training methods, and, you know, if you would watch like a training session at Westside Barbell, it was intense, you know, but he really, really focus a lot on recovery, and he would try everything. I mean, everything that he was exposed to, he tried. You know, so I think back then it would have been really awesome to have the contrast therapy, because I think that like we only really knew about like, you know, you could take an ice bath or whatever, like right after a training session or something. But now, you know, we're kind of learning like, okay, the timing of the ice baths plus, you know, plus the heat is important. You know, one thing that's kind of different with powerlifters, that some people want to stay in their weight class. It's not like bodybuilding where you want to grow, and you know, the timing of the ice baths are different. Like you don't really, at least for our knowledge in powerlifting, like doing like something that's cold right after a training session kind of like halts the hypertrophy.
Doing it prior.
Right, doing it prior to. So you know, you always thought like, oh, just a hard training session, get into the ice bath. It's like, well, you're kind of like negating some of the benefits of the hypertrophy aspect of the training session. So the timing, the knowledge about the timing, and then having the access to the cold plus a hot would have been huge for recovery, you know, because recovery is everything. When in powerlifting, like the person that does the best is the person that's the most recovered. Obviously, if you have a great training program, but you also need to be the most recovered to be able to train, because the training sessions are hard. You know, even like a dynamic effort training session, which is sub-maximal weight, that's a very difficult, you know, strenuous, workout. So being able to recover, you know, if we do that on a Friday, you got to be able to be recovered for max effort on Monday.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the Beehive.
Yeah.
So amazing brand. For you guys who don't know, she has her own team and clients that compete under you and under your supervision. So a big goal of mine is to seek out, like we talked about the first time we met, is I think the city of Cincinnati has a very bad reputation of trying to step on other people to get to where you want to go, versus trying to find a protocol that everyone is experts in to where we can find out what's best for our clients. Sure. You take your clients very seriously. You have the strongest woman in the world, who is honestly one of the sweetest people I've ever met in my life.
She really is,
under you right now. And I obviously would love to get her into Contrast. But with your everyday clients, because you don't only train powerlifters, there's still gin pop within it that you train conjugate style. Conjugate is a style that Louie Simmons created, very successful. But what I care about is, how do you think it could benefit your everyday clients? Like I always go back, there's meatheads, and unfortunately they're only seen as men. I know some sitting right next to one, badass women who lift. How do you think that could affect the everyday working mom or the everyday human being who doesn't compete at a national level or even at a local level? How do you think that could benefit their lives?
I think we're learning so much about the benefits of it, not just for recovery from a hard training session, which a lot of people now are into, whether it's lifting weights or, you know, whatever style of training they're into. So like recovery is still important for most people, but I think for the average person, you know, I really consider the benefits of longevity, you know, the longevity aspects and inflammation. I mean, like even if someone isn't into like really hard training, we're still suffering from, you know, you get older, you got inflammation, your stiff joints, you know, things like that. I think most people would really love something that would help them move better, you know, and feel maybe more inclined to want to train harder. You know, some people I think just think, I don't want to work out. I feel terrible as it is. Why would I want to like go and like push my body? So There's cardiovascular benefits to it. So, I mean, all of that I think kind of goes hand in hand with longevity. I'm obsessed with longevity. I'm going to be 43 in a couple weeks. So it's just like now my focus, back then my focus was like, how strong can I get and how hard can I push my body? And I still want to push my body as hard as possible, but I really want to have like a long life where, not only am I physically able, I want to be mentally, with it and everything. So longevity is an important thing to me. So like when I listen to a lot of podcasts and learn a lot from you guys. And I just really, think that longevity is probably the most important. Longevity is such a broad term, but I think that that's one of the most important benefits for anybody, for the contrast therapy.
And we talk about the first conversation me and you ever had at the gym a couple weeks ago was talking about stress, inducing a proper amount of stress. Right. Everyone thinks stress is bad. Stress is bad if it's induced from an external source that you can't control, right?
Yeah, you
the weight room, you're choosing
stress.
that stress.
Right.
You're choosing the relationship to be in, right? Those are stressors you can control. I think it's important to learn how to induce stress in a healthy way. Yeah. And I think what a lot of people don't talk about enough is the mental benefit from getting into cold water.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how does it affect you when you get into the cold water? What first thing pops into your head when you get into the cold water?
Well, I love hard things. I love challenges. I try to pick out one thing a year that's just really mentally challenging, physically too. It's usually like run a half marathon last year. This year it was hike across the Grand Canyon, like things that are mentally challenging. So getting into the cold tub is the same thing. It's literally like, I can do this, hopefully a lot of people can do this as well. But I just think like if someone so-and-so can do it, so can I, and I just know that, if I can just hang in there for 3, 4, 5 minutes, that the benefits are going to be way outweigh what I'm feeling at the time,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, just that stress, that feeling, like I know that it's my body's way of adapting to that stress and being able to handle, other forms of stress, mental, physical.
So what do you think that I talk about strong women a lot. I have a strong wife. I have a strong mom. I have a strong sister. I have strong friends. How do you think, as a business in contrast, how do you think we can continue to empower and uplift women to make them stronger?
Well, I think, just really reiterating that the physical benefits of contrast therapy and the recovery and being able to kind of reach your limits. I think, recovery is everything. So anytime I try to my training is very different now. I used to, it was just lift. Now it's lift, conditioning, hard, like I said, the hard things that I like to choose to do.
Yep.
And I don't think that I could do any of those things if I was not focused on recovery, if I didn't have good recovery protocol like this to be able to recover, to be able to train, because, being 42, like my body hurts a lot more, but being able to do things to mitigate that, helps a ton, because if I didn't do any of it, if I didn't do that, I would probably wake up and be like, I just do not feel like training today. I don't want to do that. Like my body hurts, like walking down the steps in the morning to go to the bathroom. I'm like, oh my gosh, so, having this to be able to mitigate those feelings and, be able to keep training and to be able to get to the gym and recover so that tomorrow I feel good enough to train again is huge. So I think that women can really benefit from that because, it just being able to train like the way you want to for as long as you want to is important.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I have one more thing. Well, I have two more things. Selfishly, again, I don't get to sit down with you a lot. And this is within contrast because it's in wellness. What advice do you have? Like, hopefully I have a son. I want a daughter. What advice do you have to give to the younger generation of women? How do you get involved in wellness? Does it have to be powerlifting? But how do you get involved in wellness? And how do you kind of fight against the stereotypes? Because you're a groundbreaker, you're an outlier. And this question makes sense in this podcast, but at the same time It doesn't. I just have to ask you that question.
Yeah. It's a good question because when I was kind of coming up through powerlifting, I was one of only kind of a handful of women that were competing in powerlifting. Truly, like I would go to a competition, I'd be maybe the only female that was competing. But I didn't care. I never thought of it as like, as being weird or anything like that. So I think finding your group, like for me, it was powerlifting. I felt accepted, even though I was one of only a few. I found that like even the men in powerlifting were supportive. Like nobody was like looking down at me like, why is there a woman in here? Like they actually thought it was awesome, So kind of finding your people, finding, your passion, finding your group, and then, not allowing any of those stereotypes to keep you from doing whatever it is, whatever in wellness, whether it's fitness or anything like that. You just have to find your people. That's kind of how I feel like I succeeded, was finding a group of people, like which a group meaning an entire niche of powerlifting, that was super supportive. Like I really felt like when I was growing up, I was like I need to find this thing that I know that I am good at. Like, and by good at, I don't mean like it has to be like you're the best in the world. I just mean like something that I just felt like I was meant to do. And I was searching for it. I did gymnastics. I, did the marathons and stuff like that. And I just was like, but just try a lot of things. Okay. That's another thing that I would suggest too, is just try a lot of things. I just kept trying all these things until I found something where I just felt like I fit in. I felt like I could make a difference. So even beyond powerlifting, even though I haven't competed in 10 years, but I still, I felt like, when I got done competing, I never thought I was like retired. I just was like, took a break that turned into a retirement basically. But I just felt like I can still be involved in this sport by paying it forward to other people.
Amazing.
So finding something that you enjoy, but that you can long-term like impact and motivate other people and inspire other people.
Perfect. Very inspiring.
Thanks.
The last thing I have is there's a question and a debate going around natural recovery, with essentially not doing much, sticking to diet, no external sources to help you, no foam rollers, no nothing, versus the debate of kind of enhancing and controlling your protocol of a unnatural recovery, an external source, right? Because you're not getting into a creek, you're getting into a machine that makes the water cold, you're getting into a sauna, you're not sitting in 120 degree heat in the Sahara. So what do you think the differences are in those? But more importantly, what do you think sets Contrast Studio apart from the natural recovery?
Well, natural recovery, like I just can't imagine. It blows my mind to think anybody would like try to argue that would be better, because it's, when you have access to something that can help you recover faster, I don't know why anybody would not take advantage of that. Like I was talking about before, like back in 2005 to 2014 when I was competing, there was no access to anything like this, the Contrast Studio. So it was like, unless you could like have a ice bath right next to the sauna and like do it yourself, there was just not a lot of access to something like this. And now there's access. So the barrier is gone. Now you have opportunity to be able to do this properly. And with the best of the best equipment, if I were to buy these things that, that you guys will provide for my own home, I just couldn't do that and be able to maintain them and buy all the newest stuff, So it's like, here's people are just handing this to you. Here's these recovery protocol. This is going to help you to be able to do anything you want in life, reduce stress, reduce cardiovascular risk, mobility, things like that, in recovery. It just seems crazy that somebody would not want to do something like that. And like I said, I learned under Louie Simmons, and he was a maniac about recovery and trying all the different methods. So, if this was like right in front of him right now, he would be doing it every single day. I know it. Yeah.
If you don't listen to what she's saying, you really have to check yourself. I think there's a few words that get bastardized in our industry, like culture and community. Everyone wants more culture. Everyone wants community. And like the first time we ever discussed, you're the best at what you do in the city. I'm not trying to brag. I think I'm the best at what I do in the city. Yeah. And the first thing we talked about is how from the outside wellness communities push people out. Is that, I'm going to step on you to get here. I'm going to put you down so I can gain more business. You had the powerlifting community. I had the community of performance, of people, we might lose business, but I'm actually going to send this person to you because you're better at it than me.
Yeah.
So I think there's a sense of community that recovery doesn't have in the city of Cincinnati yet. You don't have to be a weightlifter. You don't have to be a powerlifter. You don't have to be an athlete. You can be someone who's suffering from a mental health disorder. You can be someone who's suffering from a metabolic condition that affects your metabolism that we can really help out with. How do you think that this wellness community can add value to people who don't lift weights in the city of Cincinnati?
Like you were saying, and what we had talked about is just paying it forward, being able to like refer people. Like I've had people come to me as, personal trainer. I've had people that have come to me who have had kids. They want me to train their kids for a sport and something. I've always said, go to Black Sheep, because that is not my lane. So I have my lane that's right here. So anytime anybody's come to me and they want like, something, this, that, or other, I'm not an expert at everything, so when it comes to wellness and recovery and things like that, I want to leave it to people that are experts in that. So I think that, that would be really beneficial for people to be able to say, like, this is where you go for that, instead of saying like, oh, I know, like this would be better, like lay on the foam roller, like this is all you really need to do. It's like, no, like this is where you go for that. This is where you go for this. This is where you go for that. I think that's better, instead of being like a one-stop shop and trying to say that you're the jack of all trades. I want to specialize in this one thing that I do, and then leave the rest over here. Come on over here.
I think also creating a community around people who want to improve their lives is powerful, whether that's some sort of a book club, it could be a running club, it could be anything. But I think we have the opportunity in Cincinnati to do something special and create a culture and a community around recovery, and recovery can look different for everyone.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.